everybody, it's Sarah, and really, I should right now be filming reviews because since I started filming again, there's a bunch of books I've read that I really want to film reviews for. However, we're not vibing with that right now. So what I decided to do instead is an idea I had recently, and that is giving book recommendations to D&D characters. However, I know that there's a bunch of videos out there of like book recommendations for D&D classes or races or whatever. However, I want to give specific recommendations to the characters, the PCs at my tables. For those of you who don't know, I have been DMing 2 campaigns since summer of 2023. One campaign is with 4 players, the other campaign is with 5 players. And I'm gonna be making 2 videos recommending books to the PCs of each campaign, and I want to start with the one that's with 4 players. These recommendations, some of them are gonna be based purely on vibes, some of them might be based a little bit around the classes, and some players or some PCs I really had a hard time finding recommendations for some reason. I don't know why. But let's get into it. I will tell you a little bit about each character, and then I will give you the books that I would recommend to that character. Sadly, I do not have any character arc because I don't have the money for commissions, and also I refuse to use AI for character art. So, you know, you're just gonna have to deal with me simply talking. But yes, the first campaign that this video is going to be based around is the Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign. I only really, so far at least, do modules because I don't have the time to come up with anything original, not gonna lie. So it's Wild Beyond the Witchlight. It's 4 PCs in total. They are a mess. I love them so much. The campaign very much is very roleplay heavy. We have only really had 1 session so far out of like 12 or something. No, it must be more than 12. I don't know. Out of a bunch of sessions that has been more than just like 5 seconds of combat. So very roleplay heavy, very chaotic, 4 characters. And let's start with the one that I probably shouldn't start with because the books are at the very bottom for that one. But let's start with Lapis. Lapis is the campaign's cleric. He is, I believe, life domain cleric, or a life domain cleric, and also a water genasi. And Lapis needs to be protected at all costs. Lapis does not believe there is bad in people. He believes everyone is ultimately good. He goes and picks up every single side quest, and the other characters have become very protective of him. As such, obviously, I have to recommend Lapis something cozy, which for me personally is not very easy because there's not a lot of cozy fantasy that I read. So yeah, but I found 2, both of them incidentally Illumicrate books. Also, I said cozy fantasy as if I couldn't recommend something else that's not fantasy. I just read 90% fantasy, so that's why cozy fantasy specifically. But yeah, the first book is The Phoenix Keeper by S.A. MacLean. So this book is set in a fantastical zoo. Our main character is a Phoenix Keeper, hence the title. And the national breeding program for phoenixes has kind of been disrupted and destroyed by poachers at the very beginning of the story. And so the story follows our main character, whose name I have once again forgotten, Isla. It follows Isla, who is trying to get like the Association for Phoenixes to select her zoo as the next point for like the breeding program to continue. And as she tries doing that, she also has to work together with her rival from college, who is at the same zoo, who she's kind of also attracted to. So this is also queer. Our main character is bisexual, and mostly the stakes are pretty low. It's just about Isla and what's the other person's name? I forgot her. Whatever. And the Luciana. Or Luciana. It's about Isla and Luciana trying to get the breeding program to come to the zoo, and then also, you know, the whole thing with the poachers kind of comes back again as well. I absolutely loved and adored this. Isla also has social anxiety, and I found her to be very relatable in a lot of aspects there. I love Isla's best friend as well, who's in here as well. There's just tons of lovable characters. And again, it's pretty low stakes. It's very comfortable to read even with the social anxiety. And so I think Lapis would enjoy this. I think, you know, there's not too much tension. There's just some tension, and it's just about, it's about fun people. The other one I want to recommend to Lapis, I'm not quite as sure if it would count as cozy fantasy. It's like kind of cozy in the way that Ghibli is cozy, where there's a lot of other elements throughout, but the vibes overall are cozy, and some of the stakes aren't necessarily too high while others are more intense. But that's Watermoon by Samantha Soto Yambao. This one is also like one of the comps is Ghibli, and this is one of the first books I read where I feel like the Ghibli comp isn't just generally, you know, it's cozy vibes, but it's actually the kind of like weird, almost whimsy, unexplainable magic that Ghibli has a lot of the times. I really found it again in this one. This one is, I always forget the main characters' names. This one is about Hana, and Hana's dad has a kind of magical shop. It's a place where people go if they have regrets, and they turn in their regrets. So one day Hana's dad vanishes, and pretty much it's about her trying to figure out what happened to her dad, while on her heels there's these kind of like monstrous beings trying to catch her and find her as well, and trying to find her dad also. And she goes on this journey with this guy who, on the same day that her dad vanishes, just kind of appears in the shop. I really enjoyed this one as well. I loved it. I know this got a lot of mixed reviews. Personally, it just fit perfectly for me, and I think it would really fit with Lapis because there's a lot of complicated family history stuff in here as well, which Lapis has some of as well. And there's also some dealing with grief. And I feel like Lapis is a character who suppresses a lot of stuff, you know, even without realizing. So I think a book like this, which is like cozy but also has some depth to it, can really work. Next, let's go with the character that's the complete opposite of Lapis, which is Murmur. Murmur is our Tabaxi Oath of Vengeance paladin, and they and Lapis have a very interesting dynamic. They are very fun because they're the exact opposite, and so while Murmur has become very protective of the group, they don't really, you know, they don't really want to admit that they are. And so the first one I have, this is also Scylla's character. So I know Scylla has read both of these series that I'm gonna recommend, and I'm gonna be very interested if she thinks that I selected correctly. The first one is a series that when I started this channel I talked about a lot. I haven't talked about this in a while, and I think this one would be perfect because arguably I would say the main character is also an Oath of Vengeance paladin. And the series I'm talking about is The Chronicles of the Emerged World, starting with Nihal from the Land of the Wind by Licia Troisi. This is a YA Dragon Rider series. like, forget Fourth Wing, forget even Aragon. I loved Aragon. I read this right after Aragon because it was recommended to me when I was like 11 as Aragon, but with a female main character. This one was my obsession. It follows Nihal, and Nihal grows up with just her father. She grows up in a land that is torn by war, has been torn apart by war for pretty much as long as she remembers, longer than she remembers, and it's the emerged world. Only half the countries in the emerged world are still free, the other are under the sway of a tyrant who has been waging this war and has tried to like conquer everything. Now at the very beginning of the story, Nihal's hometown in the Land of the Wind is attacked by the tyrant. Her father is killed, and during all of this she finds out that he's not actually her father, he's her adoptive father, and she is the last survivor of a race that has been wiped out by the tyrant of the half-elves. And so she swears vengeance on the tyrant for both her father as well as for her people. However, to do that, also, I'm sorry if you can hear the ambulance. To do that, she tries to get into the Academy for Dragon Riders. However, they won't accept girls. And so the first book is about her trying to get into the Academy and trying to become part of this war. And yeah, I really feel like she's an Oath of Vengeance paladin. I feel like Murmur could relate hard to Nihal in a lot of elements. I don't know how good the English translation is. I read the German translation. It's an Italian author, but definitely absolutely loved and adored this when I was a teen. And then the other one is a series that Scylla loves as much as I do. And listen, A Chorus of Dragons, for the very specific reason that this entire series, the entire thesis of the series, is about the power of friendship. And Murmur can use some of that. Actually, a lot of that. So this series is written in kind of an experimental way because all of the books, it's a 5-book series, are in 2 different narrative strands. So one is always first-person perspective, and then another one is third-person perspective. Within this first one, at least, although also I think within at least the second one, I don't remember after the third one how it was, but within the first one at least, the 2 strands are also not simultaneous chronologically. The one in first-person perspective is set a few months back, while the one in third-person perspective is set a few years back. However, both strands in the first book follow the same character, and that is Kirin. We meet Kirin at the very beginning of this book, imprisoned by someone. And this someone tells Kirin, I want you to entertain me and tell me your life story. And so Kirin starts telling his life story a few months back, and telling the character who imprisoned him is like, nah, you didn't go back far enough, and starts in Kirin's teen years childhood, or later teen years, I think like around 15, 16. And so we find out about Kirin, and how Kirin is maybe, you know, embroiled in this big prophecy for the end of the world and the apocalypse, basically. And so I absolutely loved and adored this series. Kirin, yes, is the main character, however, there's a bunch of other characters you also meet and fall in love with. And again, the entire thesis of this book, of this series, is the power of friendship will save the day, or we need the power of friendship to save the day, hopefully. And so I think Murmur needs some of that, so yeah, I think Murmur should read A Chorus of Dragons. Moving on, we have a character that I have 3 recommendations for actually, and that's Gerard. Gerard is a human wizard. I'm not exactly sure which school though right now. And Gerard is an oddly pragmatic person. Gerard feels like he has more morals than he actually has. Well, I'm doing him a disservice, to be honest. Gerard very much has morals. It's just that sometimes he can also be very pragmatic, and that upsets Lapis regularly. But yeah, he's a wizard. He studies a lot. He loves history, and as such, of course, my first recommendation that I have is The Memoirs of Lady Trent by Marie Brennan, starting with A Natural History of Dragons. This is kind of the fake memoirs of Lady Trent, who is in a like fantasy Victorian era, a woman who wants to become a naturalist at a time where, just like in our world, during the Victorian age, it wasn't very easy for a woman to become a naturalist, and specifically she wants to study dragons. And so each of the books follows her on her travels as she studies dragons. Absolutely love this, love the way it's written, and I think Gerard would appreciate. Next is a book that might be, I don't know, I'm going off of vibes. I cannot specifically argue why I think Gerard would like this, but I feel like he'd vibe with this one, and that's The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. This one I have talked about multiple times already since I'm back. I read it at the beginning of June. It's a horror novel set in this besieged medieval castle where our main character is a kind of alchemist. She tries to figure out a way to make food from nothing. And she very much follows the scientific method throughout. There's also two other characters that we follow. One is a lady knight and one is a noble lady, or used to be a noble lady. And one day there's saints, or characters who appear to be saints, that turn up in the castle and everything seems saved. However, maybe it isn't. Also, there's cannibalism. And I don't know why. I feel like Gerard would vibe with that. Like, not with the cannibalism, but like the book and the characters. Especially Fosni, I think is, yeah, Fosni, Fosine. That's like one of the three POVs. So yeah, I don't know. I know Josh also watches my videos, so maybe he can tell me if Gerard would vibe. And then the last one, because again, I have 3 for Gerard. Gerard is probably the one in the party who would read the most anyway. But it's The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu, simply because of how expansive and how detailed it is, and how there's a lot of different elements. We have a lot of history, we have politics, we have philosophy, we have invention. There's like a lot of very intricate elements in this series that I think that Gerard would really enjoy. The first book in the series, The Grace of Kings, follows a rebellion against this empire, and it follows the 2 generals basically who are part of the rebellion, who are the 2 big generals who also have very opposing ideas and morals, as they lead through the rebellion and then also start fighting against each other. And then from that point onwards, it goes into a multi-generational, decades spanning fantasy story. Absolutely love and adore it. And actually the last character, or at least the player of the last character in the campaign, should also finally finish the 4th book in a series. Alex and me buddy read The Speaking Bones. Is it The Speaking Bones? Yeah, I think, like the last book in the series. At the beginning of 2024, I finished. Alex never did. Also, we can now continue on to the last PC, which again is Alex's PC, and it's Him. Him is a tiefling bard. I don't remember which college, however. And for some reason, Him was the hardest one for me to find recommendations for. Mostly because for some reason I only picked recommendations of books that I know Alex has read and loved. And so I don't know, I didn't want to go with that. Like, him would love T. Kingfisher, I think, but then I know that Alex has read almost everything that T. Kingfisher has written. So I tried to find 2 books. I do have 2 books that I think fit. The first one is mostly vibes. For some reason I feel like him would enjoy When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vida Kelly. This one is a historical fantasy romance novel set at the beginning of the 20th century on Coney Island, and it follows a Puerto Rican immigrant who like works in a smithy, and he is given, or he's told to make like a huge massive tank. He's not told why to make this glass tank with like metal all around it, but he has to make it. And once it's done, he is asked to help retrieve something from the ocean. And it turns out that something that he has had to make the tank for is a merman. And so our main character, whose name I also forgot, Benny. And so Benny ends up joining the group where the leader gave the commission for the tank originally, and he kind of starts taking care of the merman, and the 2 of them start growing closer. And there's a lot of like secrets of who you are, of identity in this book. And I don't know, for some reason I think Hin would enjoy it. I think she'd like this book. Another book they would definitely enjoy is The Gospel of Loki by Joanne M. Harris. This one is also a book that I used to talk about a lot. I haven't in a while, and it's basically a retelling of Norse mythology, but from the POV of Loki. That's why it's called The Gospel of Loki. And Loki in this one has this very sarcastic, dry humor that I think him would really appreciate. And so this one is the last recommendation that I have for this video. And yeah, with all of that said, I can't really tell you, like, general viewers, what you'd think if my recommendations were correct. However, I know that some of my players, at least, regularly watch my videos. So Scylla, obviously, Josh, Alex, I think, every now and again, and Josie also sometimes. Tell me if you think that I chose correctly in my recommendations. Otherwise, for everyone else, these recommendations also go for you, because these are all books that I think gave at least 4 stars to, that I really enjoyed. So are you gonna pick any of them up? If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to my book club will be linked down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!